Hello and welcome to episode 10 of The Imperial Truth. My name is Greg Dan. I'm very pleased to announce that we have a sponsor for the next few episodes, Scatter Shot Painting. Chris has jumped on with us, so if you go to Facebook and search for Scatter Shot Painting, you can find all the details there. And thank you very much once again to Chris for jumping on board. Absolutely brilliant. This show is a little bit shorter again. We talk briefly with Joe from our club later on about a bit of gaming experience we had and his reasons for getting into the Heresy and things like that. But as usual, we will be starting with what's been going on around the Heresy. Interestingly enough, the first point we start at is with Games Workshop. Now, some people may have known that they were looking for a new CEO, where they have chosen their new CEO. They brought, I think it's the Chief Operating Officer in that role, and he will be starting in January. Rumours are that this guy one of the things he wants to do is get Forge World available in the shops. Now, whether that proves to be having Forge World on the shelf or even if it's just being able to order into the shop and pick up from the shop. If you do have a local GW, this will save that 15% shipping cost or whatever it is, unless you get over a £250 order. So what it could look is when you want that 20-man squad and you don't want to spend all that money, that you can just get it ordered and sent to shop for free and pick it up on the Friday or whatever day you're going in to pick it up. So as far as I'm concerned, that was a rumour that I thought was really quite exciting. It's the little things sometimes, to be honest. And I know in the last year or so there's been a couple of occasions where it's really irked me that I couldn't just get something sent to the shop. So let's have our fingers crossed for that one. Moving on to Forge World themselves, I was going to be talking about the Horus Heresy Weekender tickets, but they sold out fairly quickly. I know the buzz was pretty big when I was at the event, and the photo I took and posted on Twitter, maybe Facebook, seemed to go to a few forums and things like that with the dates on. And I think it took a week and a bit until all the tickets were sold, and it looks like that it may even this may increase year on year. So that's going to be a really good time. I say a lot of people going, a lot of people talking about getting in games there. When we were there for the last one, I think there were 8 tables that you could play on. I know that there's a few people that are organising Friday gaming at Warhammer World. So if you're around Nottingham on that Friday, I think it's the 6th of February, then, and you can pop in, you've got the time, there might be some pretty cool Horus Heresy armies being put out at Warhammer World for people to go and have a look at while they're playing games. So I myself might be there, need to organise exactly what we're doing, but I'll certainly try and get up and have a look round. And with it only being a couple of months away now, it's kind of tensions, things are already starting to ramp up. I know I've heard some interesting discussion about what Forge World are going to release there, and it'll be interesting because they normally like something at these events that they can have out either on pre-sale or just to have there beforehand, or even necessarily at an event only. So it will be interesting to see what Forge World come up with for that. But really looking forwards to it, and always good to catch up with people at those kind of events. So, but unfortunately, sold out. So I mean, it is a limited space, and that's the good thing about it. This is the downside, that not everyone obviously can go. And with the speed of the selling out, I can only imagine next year that people will be jumping on it even more quickly. Forge World also put out a notice on their Christmas shipping dates. It's always good to have a reminder that if you are asking for Forge World or looking to get yourself something before Christmas, then have a look on their website and make sure that you're putting your order in early enough that you can get it before Christmas. Nothing worse than trying to order something and having it turn up after the time you want it. We have the normal edition of Conquest now available for £78. There are still, I think it's fewer than 250 copies of the special edition, which is £90. £12 more. I would personally say grab the special edition if you can. There's a cool poster in there. Paul Rudge will be happy for me to hear me say that, of his Titan that's been all special effects up in the way that Forge World do, and that's a cool poster that can go in your geek den above your painting table, something like that. But I love having the case with it for starters, and it sits alongside my other ones. But you also get a kind of laminated info cards which contain, so we've got one for Space Marine Legion weapons, got one for Solar Auxilia weapons, one for Weapons of the Mechanicum, and also Warlord traits covering the 4 army lists, and Space Marine Legion weapons and War Gear special rules. So you've got these 4 laminated sheets that you can have out as a quick reference guide, which saves you having to flick through your book. And, maybe even if you've got the stats for your books on an army builder-esque, app, or printed them out, so, Quartermaster and those kind of things, it saves you having to lug that book around or go through that book. And I've seen some people questioning how the books hold up to that constant looking through. I haven't had an issue with that, but I haven't used mine a huge amount. I know that I did myself find a PDF copy of those books as well, which is a pain to look through when you're gaming because they can be quite slow. But owning the books does preserve those books, does save you lugging around the weight, particularly, which is an issue that you can have. But I really like those cards. I think they're absolutely brilliant, and I know that they'll go with me when I'm gaming until I get to a point where I know exactly what I was doing with the rules, which will take some time. And as I discussed with Joe later in the episode, getting to grips with the Heresy in general is quite a step that I'm really not there yet. But hopefully the more games I get in and a little bit quicker as well, that will become a little bit easier. That library have also got some interesting Heresy bits. They're doing this gallery range, selling the art prints that they've been doing for quite a while, and we have copies of covers of some of the books. We've got Legacies of Betrayal, The Purge, and Garrow's Shield of Lies. These prints, which are fantastic prints. Neil Roberts does such an amazing job on them. Something we make sure we talk about on After Ulanor, the covers of the books. And also another image called Sons of Lupercal, which was taken from the second part of Vengeful Spirit when it was made into a foreign language book. So you've got a cool scene there, which won't be sitting on your shelf if you have the books in English only. And I do like the art prints. I really can't justify buying them at the moment. Money doesn't spread that far, I'm afraid, but it kind of tempts me every time I see them to grab one. But that's more models or money I'm not actually spending on the hobby. So maybe one day we'll build up to it. And finally, we have the model releases from Forge World. I can't remember what I've talked about. I think I talked about the Styrics last time. So we've got the Solar Auxilia Lehman Russ Incinerator, which is just one of the most awesome turret mounts I think I've seen in 40k, or 30k should I say, across the two. Which the mount itself is a twin-linked Vulkite Demi-Culverin. Now, I don't know hugely what it does, but it sounds awesome. And again, later on we talk about my experiences of finding exactly how cool Vulkite can be. alongside them, we have the Solar Auxilia Velataris Storm section, which again, I love the look of these Solar Auxilia troops, and these look just as fantastic. You know, some of them running forwards and whatever. But it's another really cool set, and it's just kind of tempting me in on something that I probably don't want. I think in this circumstances, I'm going to wait for another Imperial Army kind of selection, however long that can be, or maybe make my own. I think they're cool, but I don't think I want to be painting them. That's mainly down to my limited ability and time. And the release that got a lot of people excited was the Imperial Fists Legion Contemptor Dreadnought, which looks stunning. I'm not necessarily a fan of the shape of the Contemptor, the kind of bulbous chest of it, but the iconography on the front of this is phenomenal, and the weapon. And yeah, it's I say the only thing that really bugs me is that kind of really round, fat stomach almost of it. But I mean, that's just a personal aesthetic choice. But as I say, the iconography that's put on that I think is fantastic, and possibly my favourite of all the Legion-specific ones they've done. So that's roughly what's been going on that I found in the Heresy. So what we'll do is we'll take a quick break and we'll come back, and it's myself and Silent Joe from the Hydra Gaming Club talking a little bit about our experiences over the Heresy. Do you have transport bags filled with grey plastic models? A centrepiece model that you can't yet bring yourself round to try and do justice to? A total hatred of painting blocky vehicles? Or even just the idea of an army that you haven't yet bought any models for and can't see any way of fitting in painting time around the job, kids and everything else life throws at you? Maybe you should give Scattershot Painting a message. Chris has been painting for 10 years and you can see examples of his work on Facebook pages. Prices start from as little as $5 a model for good tabletop quality models, and there will be plenty of communication, including a lot of photos as the project progresses. Chris specialises in single miniatures and is just as happy painting armies. So whether you want a single model painted or a whole army put together from scratch, then head over to Facebook and search for Scattershot Painting and send Chris a message. Joining me now, we have Silent Joe from the Hydra Gaming Club, one of our regular players down there. Hello, Joe.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Oh, good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm grand. Getting you on to just discuss why you got into Heresy and have a little overview of our game, and it will be a very brief overview due to the nature.
Because it was a very brief game.
It was indeed. So you, like myself and Dan, who had on the show, come from a fantasy background mainly, don't you? Last few years.
We've played competitive fantasy I've played for about 5 years now.
Yeah.
You've a bit longer, you haven't you?
Yeah, it was about 6 or 7 years ago that I started picking up fantasy almost exclusively. So, why are you now playing Horus Heresy?
Obviously, as a kid, everyone starts with 40k, don't they?
I think most people do, yeah.
But then people mature into fantasy. But I just fell out of love with it a little bit, and Greg and Dan started playing, and it looked like fun. The models are really cool, so that's always a really good reason to start playing.
Yeah, so that was a major issue, was it, the models?
Yeah, they just look a lot better than normal Space Marines, really.
I think that's probably fair to say, without disrespecting normal Space Marines at all.
More Space Marines. They're fine. Just not my cup of tea.
So, having looked at that, you're playing a Death Guard force?
I am.
How did you choose Death Guard?
Well, I was always a fan of Nurgle as a 40k player. I think I had a Plague Marine army at some point. So I was just they've got some cool toys, and the whole sides and death theme it's very appealing.
At one point you were looking at the White Scars though, weren't you?
Yeah, I do have a White Scars 40k army, but I wanted to get in and start playing post haste, so I thought I'll jump in with the Death Guard and
so was that
enjoying it. So.
Yeah, was that the fact that there are no White Scars specific rules?
Yeah, and it's probably going to be a while till there are any, so I thought I'd just jump in, really, get cracking.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's a similar thing to what I've done with the Mechanicum, due to the nature of not having the Space Wolf stuff available. So you've built up quite a force quite quickly.
Yes.
Did you look at any of the rules before you started collecting?
I procured the rules and had I had them as PDFs on my phone. I'm just going to say that. And so I was just reading them at work, really, and things just like an army list just starts to form in your mind, doesn't it? Around certain themes, like the Death Shroud Terminators, they look really nice, and so I thought, I have a few of those and start building around them.
And is it at this point that certain units stick out to you at more than just the theme? Because I think it's fair to say that Dan and I expected you to bring certain things before anyone else, and you were certainly the first in our group to show what a Spartan can do.
Well, I had a Spartan for my Space Marine army because our friend Alex, who we don't see very much, who plays competitive 40k, I think he had a Spartan once, and I saw it, and the old duckbill Land Raider.
Right.
And so I don't know. I just got drawn to it, as it seems like a good purchase because I'll probably use it quite a lot.
Oh, that's fair enough. Okay, that's quite interesting. I thought you may have seen what it did in the game.
No, because the first time I used it, I didn't actually use flare shields because I had no idea you could put them on.
Yeah, this has been noticed with other people who have taken the Spartan at times, and anyone experienced, his reply is, yeah, it doesn't come without flare shields. So for those who aren't aware, the flare shields that we're talking about reduce the strength of all the shots that are coming into the front armour by 1, don't they?
Yeah, and blasts by 2. So
yeah, so with an armour 14 front on a Land Raider,
with 5 hull points and extra capacity and extra guns.
It's 20 carrying capacity with 4 quad laser las cannon battery things. It's just mobile death, really.
Yeah, it's your whole army in a box.
Yeah, I mean, you pay a whack of points for it, but...
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're looking at about 50% more points than a standard Land Raider, but you probably get more than 50% of a Land Raider, so...
Yeah, I think you're quite right there. I think purely the fact that those flare shields mean you're not getting to roll on the table a lot of the times, the damage table.
Yeah, it's just a massive force multiplier, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, so
the extra guns are one thing, and the extra capacity is another, but then you start heaping on flare shields and ceramite, and it's got machine spirit, which is quite rare in 30k, and just turns into a bit of a monster.
Yeah, those las cannon batteries, they sound great, but when you realise that you're not going to be rolling those weapon destroyed results as often, then that becomes even better. Yeah,
and there's other things like put an auxiliary drive on it, and suddenly you're only going to immobilise it 50% of the time. So it's going to be more effective as a transport rather than a gun platform, and you can actually put a dozer blade on it in 30k, so it can just steam over terrain. It's just really versatile as tanks go. I mean, it is a lot of points, but you won't regret it if you do put it in your army because it will die very rarely unless they've got dedicated weapons for it.
Yeah, I think it's the first point that I really appreciated the kind of upped scale of aggression of 30k and the possibilities of what is going to happen in 30k games as opposed to 40k games.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you've spoken about it on the podcast before, but it definitely works as a much bigger game, like much higher points value.
Yeah, and we saw that. We played a game at the club this week, and there was little bit of confusion over us organising the game, and we decided in the end on a 1,500 point limit.
Yeah,
which is a small game for 30k, which is not a problem at all.
Yeah, that's like standard size, really. Well, not standard, but it's that's a normal-ish size game for 40k. So you kind of expect it to translate more or less, but you don't quite realise because you buy a unit at an increased cost, but then the additions to that unit are cheaper. So it benefits you to take much bigger units that are more expensive.
Yeah, once you've got to that 20-man unit, it's cheaper than the equivalent what you would be doing in 40k.
Yeah, but the 10-man base is much more expensive.
Yeah, so it's an interesting concept, and particularly when you're adding on these tanks, my experience of writing 30k lists is extremely limited, and you were a bit surprised. I mean, I took I'll go through kind of roughly what we had in our list. So I had a Spartan with 20 legionaries in there and a Praetor, and then I had 10 missile launcher heavy support dudes, and then another 10 legionaries in a Rhino, and filled out with a Mortis Dreadnought and a land speeder. Just kind of, I had 100 points left, and it fit in nicely. If you just run through briefly what you had.
I had a Praetor in Cataphracti armor, the beefier Terminator armor. He was running Pride of the Legion, so I didn't need normal Space Marines as my troops. I could have veterans and Terminators. So I had a unit of Cataphracti Terminators in my troops and a unit of veterans, funnily enough. The veterans had an Apothecary. And then I also had, what was it? It was a Dreadnought, a Mortis Contemptor, the anti-air one and the shooty one.
Yeah. With
2 assault cannons just because they look cool and I wanted to use it pretty much. And I had a Whirlwind, the funky one that shoots lots.
Yeah.
A Strength 8 AP3 with small blasts rather than a big pie plate at low strength. And then I also had a unit of a heavy support squad with 10 Vulkite Culverins that Greg was very fond of.
They look amazing. They
do
awesome.
Look good.
All the Vulkite weapons look awesome.
Yeah, I mean, because it's just something you haven't seen in 30k. Oh, 40k, sorry.
Yeah, and it's something they're keeping out of 40k as well, which is cool.
Yeah, and then attached to that squad was a Master of Signals. Just bare bones, just in Artificer armor.
Yeah, so this really highlights where I haven't really looked through the rule book very much. And he turned up, and I was kind of half expecting to play a slightly bigger points game, so I wanted to keep my Spartan in there because I hadn't used one before. And that was basically like that was my idea. I want to put 20 guys in it and have a dude in it and just see what happens with just using kind of basic normal stuff out of the book and see where it goes. Problem being, I wasn't appreciative of what these guys could do with their Vulkite weapons and the rules that go with them.
I'd done the maths, and you can kind of work out in your head 40 shots, hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s. It's going to do a lot to power armor, even with the 3-up save.
Absolutely, yeah.
You're definitely going to get a lot of wounds through. And then again, talking force multipliers, it was the Master of Signals can give them +1 ballistic skill. So suddenly they hit on 2s instead of 3s. And then they've got Deflagrate as well, which means every unsaved wound causes another hit at strength 6. So they're just really good at chewing through the men.
Definitely, and 45-inch range.
Yes,
which is a bit strange, but they've got a good range and covers pointless because you're going to be getting your armor save anyway. And I wasn't quite prepared for that. And the destructive, once you said kind of, oh yeah, +1 ballistic skill, everything, I suddenly realised, that unit's then dead. And it was. That was 10 guys taken off with ease with a few wounds to spare.
Yeah. I mean, that was the missile squad in...
yes.
They were sitting in a building, I just 10 guys. It's something like 25 wounds I think I did before Deflagrate.
Yeah, it's I mean, during the game my dice weren't good, but even taking that into account, it was obvious that they were never going to last. You'd have to roll pretty darn well just to have anything left, really. And even if you do have anything left, then it's not really usable anymore.
Yeah, but then, I mean, they have a similar problem where, you shoot them, you take 5 guys off, suddenly they're not that great anymore.
No, they do lose that effectiveness quite quickly because they are relying on weight of shots.
Yeah, definitely.
So that is, I didn't necessarily have the tools in my army to kind of deal with that. But again,
and they've got the weakness of I can't hurt armor value 13.
Yeah, and again, that's a 350-ish point unit.
Yeah, and with the Signal Master who's 90 points, it's it's not cheap, definitely, for what it does.
So yeah, it's quite. These are quite good games for me to learn very quickly. I mean, I was apart from you were never going to hurt my Spartan, really.
No, I mean, I had lots of things that could glance it on 6s, but those were hopeful at best.
Yeah, so my Spartan's fine, but the problem is that every time I have to get troops out, they were just going to get mauled by everything coming in at them. So it very gives you for those who haven't played 30k yet, it's quite hard to appreciate just how devastating the game is. I mean, this game was over start of turn 4.
Yeah. I mean, you had the Spartan left and a Rhino, and all the men were dead.
Yeah, only because you hadn't shot at the Rhino. Basically,
pretty much.
That's the only reason that was still alive. So yeah, it was a squad dead a turn, bang, 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 take it off, and I'd done a little bit of damage to a number of squads, but where I hadn't quite got those big point units kind of right. But I mean, that's part of a small game. If we'd had a bigger game, those missile launchers may have been in a different position for a different target and therefore be more effective.
Yeah, definitely.
And et cetera, et cetera. So definitely moving forwards, I think. Well, I haven't read Conquest yet. It's sat there, and I know you've got your copy of Conquest.
Yeah, I've had a flick through at the Solar Auxilara rules, but
yeah, I think there's some.
Really had a read.
From what I hear, there's some rules in there maybe about having some smaller scale fights, but I mean that's literally I haven't had a chance to get around to flick through it yet, but it's something we're going to have to do on the show at some point. So we'll try and get people reading that to record our thoughts on it.
Yeah. Another thing is, it sounds good having a whole army of Space Marines. Like everyone's got a stat line of 4, and they've got pretty good guns and really good armor, but you're always coming against Space Marines. Most of the time you're fighting what you are, so suddenly it becomes a bit obsolete having this stat line of 4.
Yeah, it's just the norm. It's that is the norm.
Yeah, and so your troops can sometimes feel a bit useless when they're shooting at other Space Marines and not doing a lot, but you've paid a lot of points for them.
Combat's always a funny one. We had 10 Marines versus 10 Marines, essentially, didn't we? Or 10 Marines versus 7 Marines.
Yeah.
And the combat was always 1 or 2 down. Never really decisive because they weren't.
There's no substantial losses either side. It was
because they weren't dedicated
minor.
assault Marines. They didn't have those required, the weapons or the multitude of attacks or the better stats that are required, and that comes into play for. The word bearers have got their Galvor Brack now and things like that then do change the system of the game.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool. And in fact, the Solar Auxilia as well, the fact that you've got troops in there that you will run over the top of if you get there.
Yeah.
I think is really cool.
But having a look at the Solar Auxilia rules, they seem to have the tanks to stop that happening.
Yeah, you've got to get there first.
Yeah, lots of 4 whole point Lehman Russes knocking about now, which are quite worrying.
Yeah, and those flamer squads and things to come out and counter attack before you do get to charge. And
yeah, and there's some cool upgrades in there for the basic guys, like you can have strength 6 las guns, which is pretty cool. So
it's a really I like what they've done with the Solar Auxilia. I've been reading some interesting thoughts from other people that they shouldn't have bothered. But I think the game needs that extra element. We've got the knight lists now, but essentially they're just bigger tanks that can do a bit more. So do they change a lot? Not really. And then as we move forwards, hopefully seeing with the Kauth book, when that comes out, a few demons in there as well to really... I understand why people like Marine on Marine and balance, blah, blah, blah. Whatever people claim, I understand why. But for me, it's variety. Otherwise,
I think it's all about the toys, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it always is.
Each kind of Legion has their own interesting toys that you just don't see outside of 30k.
That's half the reason why I'm not collecting my Space Wolves. I played my Space Marines as Space Wolves, but they don't feel Space Wolves. Effectively, those are the Terran guys who haven't yet, made the Space Wolf Legion, because they're just fighting like every other Space Marine faction does. So, there's no individuality in there, which does just make it feel like I just wasn't that bothered, to be honest. It's just another bunch of Marines going forwards. If they die, they die. If that's your own favourite troop type or whatever. We were talking about just before all my missile launchers dies. I was like, just imagine if they were proper long fangs. Or whatever the equivalent is going to be, it's
splitting fire, and I'm sure they have loads of quirks, wouldn't they?
Yeah, even if they don't have all that, they'll just be long fangs. They'll have that name, and it'll be more evocative. And hopefully, obviously, we'll have a model that's got wolf fetishes all over it, and what have you. And your Sons of Horus and your Death Guard and a few of those others have got a variety of troops that they can have. But as I say, we're just sitting and waiting for those next books, and that's the nature of the beast. At the end of the day, we're going to have to wait a while for all the armies to get to point A, and then it will be constant work from there as more troops as some legions fall and some legions regroup and reorganise, and Forgewell can go a bit mad with what they want to do with the troops.
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen lots of interesting models and units, but once everyone's got their rules out, I'm sure we'll see hopefully some really nice vehicles, or there's loads of names of vehicles that are mentioned in the books that you just haven't seen models for, and you're just waiting.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for Forge World in how they're going to go about maintaining, putting out what they're putting out. And obviously they've moved the two guys over to just doing Primarchs rather than doing the whole character range, so they can get more characters out there.
Right.
Which is good.
Because there are a lot of named characters in 30k.
Yeah, and you want to play these guys. You want to put these guys on the table. I mean, I haven't yet played a game with a Primarch in it. I want to do it.
Likewise.
I want to take one down. I want to maybe get all my knights out on the table at the same time and try and kill Horus.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll give it a go anyway.
Well, I'm sure we'll both give it a good crack.
Yeah, Horus. We might have to team up against Dan for that one, and he can bring Horus and his buddies, and we can go from there. So yeah, that was. Hopefully, people will find that a bit interesting. Again, these are our group's stumbling kind of explorations into Heresy. We've got a few more guys at the club who are very new. One of them's very new to 40k, in Mike, and Luke's hasn't played any 30k yet, but he's familiar with 40k. So there's a good 5 or 6 of us or so that are going to be playing. So hopefully I can get a few more games in. I know some listeners want me to talk about my Mechanicum list. The only reason I didn't take them was I'm busy painting them, and really didn't want to put them all into some form of carrying tray and before I've got it all organised and bring them all back, because knowing me, I'll break something off. Because the one problem with the Mechanicum is they have a lot of bits that stick out. And there's something to be said for Space Marines who hold guns across their chests. They're extremely easy to transport.
Yes. It's just a solid lump.
Yeah, it's really good. Although there are the Vox, the little Vox antennas are extremely, extremely brittle. The nature of using resin, unfortunately. easily fixable. Well, you can just use various other bits of wire or very thin brass rod or something like that if you have to.
Yeah.
So yeah, excellent stuff. Well, thank you for joining me, Joe.
Cheers for having me on.
Yeah, we'll get you back on at another point once we've had a few more games, and see what you make of all the other rules that we can introduce.
Yeah, definitely.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So thank you for listening to episode 10 of The Imperial Truth. We talked right at the top of the show about Conquest coming out and what that brings. I will be at some point covering it on the show. At the moment, I really haven't had a chance to break it out and look at it, which is a damn shame because from the bits I have kind of flicked through, it does look pretty awesome. And I caught little bits of chat on various forums about it. Quite interesting, again, to see some of the more negative views and the reasons for them. I do wonder sometimes if people are missing the point a lot with various aspects of the Heresy and what the company are doing as a whole. But yeah, in the not too distant future, I hope to get a full kind of decent look at the book and do that on the show, because I know some people are interested in that. Those of you who follow me, the show, should I say, on Facebook or on Twitter, will also be aware that from talking last episode about the Lodge medal that I had and not being 100% sure what to do with it, I came to the conclusion that I did want to give it away on the show. Now, I'm going to do this in a way that doesn't preclude anyone or anything like that. The simplest way I could see of doing it was literally to have whoever wants to enter the competition send an email to the show without any kind of expectation of having to do any work in that whatsoever. So, to enter the competition to win the Horus Heresy Lodge medal that I got free at the Weekender, which are extremely limited. So what you have to do is send an email to contest@theimperialtruth.com. In the title of your email, you have to write the words Lodge Medal Contest. In the main body of the email, you have to write your name. There is nothing more to it than that. If you want to take the opportunity to then give feedback to me on the show, then please feel free. However, if you do not put in the title of the email Lodge Medal Contest and then your name as the first thing in the email, you won't be put into the show. It's quite simple. I just don't really want to have to be sifting through things when I'm going through it, because hopefully there's going to be a lot of people applying, to try and win this. So the contest will be open until the recording of episode 12, which will probably be in the week between Christmas and New Year itself. So I'm not going to give a definite time on that, but when I start recording for that episode will probably be when I draw the lucky random winner. So you have quite a bit of time listening to this for those people who are catching up, maybe listening to it a bit later. So please jump in. Please tell your friends if they want a chance of winning it, and hopefully bring them into the show. And I was lucky enough, Marcus, who's been on the show before, has donated some prizes to give away on the show as well. So going into the new year, I am kind of collecting a little bit of a prize pool, but nothing quite to the value or the rarity of this Lodge medal, which is, I think it's really cool. As I say, the only reason I'm giving it away is because I don't really know what to do with it, and we'll just sit there. If that wasn't the case, I probably wouldn't be giving it away, to be honest. Yeah, so hopefully some lucky listener will get that and get more out of it than I will. If you just want to give feedback on the show, then you can always still email me on greg@theimperialtruth.com. please feel free, positive or criticism. Either way, make sure it's kind of helpful. You're more likely to get read and taken on board if it offers criticism and helpful ways to improve that. Then that's brilliant. Hopefully, over the course of the shows, those kind of things are helping the show get better, and it's all about helping the show get better. I haven't got a major issue with someone telling me they don't like something. That's fine. You can also follow the show on Facebook. If you go to Facebook and search for The Imperial Truth, or go from the show notes itself, there will be a link to the page. And you can follow us on Twitter at Imperial_Truth for the show. And my own Twitter is at Child of Fang. If I'm at events, then the Twitter is usually the first one to get kind of updated. I will have to look into maybe linking those two accounts so they both get updated. But say if I'm at events and we hear information, things like that, then it's most likely to get on Twitter and Facebook first. And lots of people are posting cool stuff on the Facebook page, their own experience, their own models, things like that. So if you are looking for some inspiration, then hopefully there might be someone there, and feel free to post your own workings on there as well. Just as long as it's 30k related, that's fine. Once again, many thanks for listening to episode 10 of The Imperial Truth. We'll be back with episode 11, which hopefully will have some information about some interesting goings on in terms of linking games around the world. So I'm looking forward to an interview that hopefully I'm doing next weekend for that. You have been listening to The Imperial Truth.